word is meant to symbolize the inseparable link between liberty and freedom, between good government and the principles of freedom that make New Hampshire strong. And I think that over the years we've tried to shine a light on people, to honor people who the state is proud of and who make a difference in the state in a very particular way. And that's what we're doing tonight. A lot of what happens in government and what happens in public policy is about personalities and elections, and people are very focused on what's going to happen in November, and they don't care what happens from December through October. And it doesn't matter much to them, and so much of what politics is about people worrying about how to position myself for the next election and how not to. Our government would fail, though, and frankly, people who probably disagree with us would win on everything if there weren't people to stand there on the front line and to make difficult decisions and understand difficult concepts, to pay attention, to not be a show horse but a work horse, to pay attention to complicated details that are not glamorous and don't get things named after you and aren't about bridges or anything like that. We're honoring tonight State Senator Chuck Morse, who for years in New Hampshire has been that sort of quiet, behind-the-scenes leader that people don't look at Chuck and say, well, he's the most glamorous guy I ever, well, I'm sure some people do. He's the most glamorous guy I ever met. But they look at him and he cut his teeth and he made his bones on the Finance Committee and as chairman of the Finance Committee. And time again, what you would do is you would look at the work that Chuck Morse did in understanding the details. And it was not about, you know what, I don't care if that works, I just want to get to a number. He cared if everything worked. And every conversation I've ever had with him in an office without decoration, I don't know what the deal is that he didn't like putting stuff up on the walls, but we would talk about sort of endless detail that would bore anyone else to tears, although I don't know what that says about me. But and what was striking is that Senator Morse knew all of the details of the budget, and he would worry just as much about a small thing buried on page 806 that was going to have long-term ramifications for the state as he did about something big and large that everybody was talking about and was in the newspapers today. And the government of New Hampshire only works if we care about things. Every decade or so, the state gets into enormous trouble because we stop caring about the things that matter, and people care about getting through, in the budget's case, getting through June. And they don't care about what's going to happen a year or 2 years down the road. We passed something. We all know it doesn't work, and it's a mess. And I think Senator Morse turned that around, and what people knew going into his committee and talking to him is that no matter what, that was going to happen. Sometimes it was a small thing that nobody cared about. Sometimes it was a big thing that everybody cared about. The first budget for which he was actually finance chairman, which a lot of people will remember in 2005, was a budget that in one of the 2 years actually reduced spending, but a budget that also kept the rate of increase in spending below the rate of inflation, which was at the time in the state an enormous accomplishment that people going into the budget said, well, you can't possibly do that. Years later, he was part of a few years later, 5 or 6 years later, he's part of a budget in 2011 that did something that was something most of us said was literally impossible. The spending actually spent 10% less than the budget before did, to something that doesn't happen, well, frankly, it doesn't happen in the states, hadn't happened in New Hampshire, and was considered impossible. And it happened because it had to, because if things like that hadn't happened, a lot of people in this room did a lot of work on that, but at the center of that storm, at the eye of that storm, was Chuck Morse. And in each case, these things happened, and maybe it was a big thing, maybe it was a little thing, maybe fixing the judicial retirement system worked in part of these budgets. But it was something that happened. People wanted to focus on the short term, they ended up focusing and ignoring the long term. And he has made sure for years that he is focused on the long term, because the long-term future of the state may not win you the next election, but a lot of us are going to live here for more than 2 or 3 years, and that matters a great deal. As a sign of how important that was in 2 particular budgets that I can think of, that Senator Morse was very much one of the architects of. The governor at the time really didn't like the budget, and attacked it and criticized him. And I'm thinking of two different governors, one male and one female. Not that I'm going to tell you who they are. And they attacked the budget as irresponsible and terrible, and I think in the one case the guy refused to sign it. And then very shortly thereafter started campaigning on that very same budget because it was a horrible, useless thing that was a wonderful accomplishment that was going to get them reelected. And it is that kind of hard work and it is that kind of dedication for which we honor Senator Chuck Morse as the winner of this year's Libertas Award. Senator Morse.
I do want you to know we do like things being named after us, and it was probably about 10 years ago in Salem. I got a phone call at 9 o'clock at night, and they told me that they had named a ball field after me, and my response to the person on the other end was I hadn't died yet, so I didn't know why they were doing it. But in any case, being in public office is it's an honor in the state of New Hampshire, and when you people say thank you like this, it's just a great thing. And I hope I was a big part of you raising more money this year than you've raised before. And one of the things I got to give Charlie credit for, he used a great picture, and the Democrats today released their fundraising, and I don't think my picture was as becoming as that one, so you might want to talk to him, Charlie. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I do want to start by saying a few words of the passing of Councilor Burton. Like many of you, I consider Ray a friend, and like many of you, his passing has touched me personally. His passing is also a great loss for this state and for the vast North Country he served so well and so passionately for so long. There are many in this room tonight who knew Ray personally or had a chance to work with him in government or in business. It is now our responsibility to carry on his legacy. Ray's spirit will live on in New Hampshire as long as those of us he helped, mentored, and inspired throughout his distinguished career continue to follow his example. If we do, New Hampshire will remain the great state that Ray knew, and it will be that way for years to come. I'm honored to be here tonight to accept this award. In doing so, it's an honor to follow in the footsteps of a great friend, Councilor Zoric, and a mentor, Governor Sununu. Past recipients of this award are two great New Hampshire leaders who exemplify the kind of hard work, focus, and integrity it takes to move this great state forward. I was told this award was in recognition of the work I did to enact balanced budgets that kept taxes low and preserved individual and economic freedom in New Hampshire. While I may have had the title of Senate Finance Chair, I was still just one of 425 people from across New Hampshire and from all walks of life who worked to put those budgets together. This award belongs in part to all of those men and women who served in the legislature and continue to serve in the legislature and did what they thought was in the best interest of their constituents. My experience working with state budget began back in 2005. I was going to throw the speech out when Charlie started naming everything that happened in budgets, but I think it means something. When I was appointed chairman of the Senate Finance Committee by then Senate President Tom Eaton, thanks, Tom, I think. Taking what I had learned from my time in the gardening business, I wasn't a writer, I approached that budget with the intent of living within our means and trimming back state government in order to encourage growth in our economy. While that first budget may not have been perfect, it did manage to actually cut state general fund spending in the second year. Doing so was such a novel concept that at the time the union leader referred to it as both highly unusual and astonishing. I still need to check with Joe to see if that was a compliment. When I returned to the Senate Finance Committee in 2011, following two Democrat budgets built on taxing borrowing, and spending philosophy, the state was facing a significant budget shortfall. State government would have needed to bring in some $800 million of new money in order to maintain that level of spending. At that time, we had two choices. We would either need to increase revenues dramatically or trim spending broadly, but cautiously. To protect the New Hampshire advantage, we needed to lead. After months of hard work, we balanced the budget, and we did so with no new fees and no new taxes. For the first time since World War II, the state reduced total spending by reforming state government and reducing its size. But we didn't forget that government has a safety net role to play. We met the responsibility by ensuring funding for the developmentally disabled, the mental health community, and other core government services. Following passage of that budget, after the protests subsided and the summer wore on, we came together to make ends meet. And New Hampshire is stronger today because of the foundation that budget put into place. In fact, early audits suggest the state will show a $76 million surplus from that budget, the highest we've seen in a decade. Throughout the remainder of the session, because of our fiscal house was in order, the legislature could lead in other areas. We enacted education tax credit program that will increase school choice. And we made it easier to form new charter schools. We reduced corporate taxes. We fixed our LLC statutes to make it easier to start businesses and easier to keep what you earn, a novel concept. We fought to keep the internet tax out of New Hampshire. We cut down on welfare fraud. We reformed the state's pension system. The 2011 budget served as a solid foundation upon which we were able to make New Hampshire a better place to live, work, and raise a family. In 2012, despite the difficult election year nationally for Republicans, the voters of New Hampshire sent the Republican Senate back to Concord. It's a slim majority. But I believe we maintained those seats because the voters saw that we were leading calmly, rationally, and putting the best interests of our citizens first. Early in the new term, the Republican-led Senate became known in some circles as the firewall. I'd like those firewalls to stand right now. The Senate, the New Hampshire Senators, please stand. And we were charged with protecting the reforms of the prior session. And I am proud to say that we did. Even though we had to take some tough votes, but more importantly, through this year's budget, we did much more than serve as a firewall. We led the way with pro-growth policies that are helping New Hampshire recover from this recent recession. As we did in 2011, we passed a balanced budget that relied on honest revenues and included no new taxes and no new fees. Our budget led by making the health of our residents a priority. We fully funded the DD waivers, increased payments to county nursing homes. Additionally, for important safety net programs like CHINS, mental health, domestic violence prevention, drug and alcohol treatment programs, they were also included. We led by investing in education, restored funding necessary to bring about a tuition freeze in our state university system, and we fully restored the unique scholarship program that assists deserving low-income New Hampshire residents attending college in-state. We led by ending the raiding of dedicated funds, like the proposal to raid the L-CHIP program that works to preserve the state's cultural resources. Preventing another raid of a fund established an important principle, another novel idea. If we are going to tax the people of New Hampshire to support a program, it's the government's job to either fund the program or remove the tax, nothing else. These were our priorities, and like families across New Hampshire, we identified our priorities, we paid for them, and we lived within our means. We did not overspend. In fact, the Senate budget, which in a large measure became the state budget, now we get here, after the committee of conference, they spent less than the governor's proposal, less than the House proposal, and less than the budget that was passed in 2009. One might have expected vocal opposition to such a budget. Instead, that budget passed the Senate unanimously. 24 senators voted for that budget. It earned 97% of the approval of the House of Representatives and was signed into law by the governor. That sort of bipartisan support on the state budget, no less, to borrow a phrase from Mr. McQuaid, is both highly unusual and astonishing. But it shows what can be done when elected officials do what their constituents ask, when they lead. Typically, the passage of a budget signals the end of a legislative session. Not this year. By removing the governor's proposal to expand Medicaid in New Hampshire, we knew we were likely setting ourselves up for a special session in late fall. We didn't know we were setting it up for today. I think that most of us can agree that access to affordable health insurance is a problem for many low-income New Hampshire citizens. It's not that the people don't want to have health insurance, it's they just can't afford it. One solution, Governor Hass's preferred solution, was to add all those insured people to the existing Medicaid system. However, the Senate said no to simply expanding financially struggling entitlement program. So we led in a different direction. Over the last few months, the Senate sought out the advice of a number of intelligent and influential policy sources as we tried to find a private insurance solution that works for the state of New Hampshire. As with any issue this complex, there are a lot of details and complications, each of which gave some folks something to support and others something to oppose. For example, I want you to bring this home, Mrs. Snow. Tom Scully, a former healthcare advisor to the President, George H. Bush, and a CMS director under George W. Bush, consulted on our plan. Tom, who worked with former Governor Sununu in the first Bush White House, encouraged us to recognize there are in fact free market concepts built into Medicaid reform. Using those concepts, he advocated to move towards private insurance as well as government role in coordinating incentives to improve outcomes and reduce costs, and other novel concepts. Eric Roy of the Manhattan Institute and Forbes magazine was introduced to New Hampshire by Conservative Americans for Prosperity. He suggested using subsidies for health savings accounts and a Medicaid demonstration waiver to increase access to care. The right-leaning Heritage Foundation, in a recent policy brief, underscored the importance of the state stepping up to assist those who need it through subsidies in the free market. In their brief, using federal Medicaid dollars to increase access to private insurance market was a key step to reforming the Medicaid program. Using those ideas, as well as the thoughtful comments and suggestions offered by healthcare professionals, medical experts, patient advocates, legislatures, and anyone else looking to get us to say yes on the issue, we constructed a proposal that we believe protected taxpayers and takes the vital steps to increasing our healthcare system. While the governor was busy criticizing and campaigning, the Senate was leading. Earlier today, we came up a little short on our proposal, but because of the work of the last couple of months, we are better prepared for when this issue returns in just a few short weeks. When it does, the Senate will continue to lead, and we sure could use your help. As a party, we must offer viable solutions to difficult issues confronting our state. Healthcare is a key economic driver in New Hampshire. It represents significant expense in our budget. It is an issue constantly on the minds of our residents. Despite having one of the healthiest populations in the country, we pay some of the highest premiums and lack competition in our healthcare market. We can do better. As we look ahead to the start of the session in January, we should recommit in our efforts to lead on this issue and doing better for the people of our state. To close tonight, I want to say 3 quick thank yous. First, to the staff and the leadership of the Josiah Bartlett Center. Thank you again for this honor and for putting the event together. More importantly, thank you for the great work you do throughout the year that makes it easier to promote the kinds of conservative, free market policies we all support. Information has always been the most important commodity in the State House, and the work of the Center ensures that we have access to that kind of data we need to make good policy choices. Please, to all of you that are enjoying this dinner tonight, be generous. Support the Center so they can continue to support us in government with good data and positive thoughts. Second, as many of you know, outside my lucrative day job as Senate President, I am also the owner of 2 garden centers in southeastern New Hampshire. In the case of Freshwater Farms in Atkinson, we are proud to celebrate 25 years in business. The time required as Finance Chairman and Senate President cuts into the time I could spend working in my business. So it's important to me to say thank you to a great group of employees that make it possible for me to do this job well. Finally, and most important, to my wife Susan and my daughter Emma, New Hampshire's unique volunteer legislature requires sacrifice, not only from elected officials, but also from our families. Thank you both for your love, encouragement, and support. Without you, I would not be here tonight. And thank you all for coming out, and have a good night.